Welcome to the ladies of Tellico Village. My name is Joan Dorsey, and this show features interviews with some of the most fascinating and talented women living right here in Tellico Village. I know you'll enjoy today's remarkable lady. Her story is special, her life has been remarkable, and I feel so honored to have her here today to share it all with us. Sit back and enjoy this episode brought to you by the volunteers at Tellico Village Broadcasting. The last time we were together, we saw the first part of Bobbi Phelps Chapman's life. It was wonderful. We now are here with the second part, which is just as wonderful. I can't wait for you to see it. This is a woman who, before her time in Idaho, had never ridden in a pickup truck, watched an animal die, touched only once an electric fence, survived a howling ground blizzard, duck hunted, or bore and raised a son whom she and her husband nearly lost later in a farm accident. Bobbi, tell me what it was like when you moved to Idaho. Even before you met Mike the cowboy, was it a difficult adjustment to be in Idaho?
Absolutely, but I was a fly fisherman and a photographer, so I had been to Idaho numerous times just visiting. Now I was accepted by the local newspaper in Twin Falls, and then I moved to Idaho.
And you could work on the company you started, but one day you saw a very handsome cowboy named Mike. You struck up a conversation. At any rate, he took you to his ranch. And it was a ranch that he worked along with his parents and his brothers, so it was a family company, really. When he drove you around the ranch, because it was much too big to walk along a fence, tell me about the size of the ranch and what they did on the ranch.
It was 4,000 acres, but it wasn't a block. It was almost like a diagonal, so it ended up being 5 by 8 miles.
What did they grow or raise?
They had cattle. And the cattle roamed in 3 different states, Idaho, Nevada, and Utah, in that corner up in the mountains. But their main business was row crop farming, and potatoes was their cash crop.
You married, you built a lovely home on the ranch, and you had an area where you could work on the company you started, and he would go out and work on the farm. If you wanted to contact one another, it was before cell phones were really popular. How did you stay in contact with each other?
It was with a Motorola phone, and I had never even seen one before. And then I had to learn to use it, but it just didn't go to our ranch. Anything you said on the phone went to 4 different ranches, so all the workers could hear whatever happened. And many different things happened to me because I didn't know any different. Coming from 40 miles from New York City, I was experiencing first-time episodes almost daily.
You had friendships and couples that you socialized with, but socializing meant what?
We would go into town and play bridge every Friday night, and that group was the Friday night bridge group.
You built this nice house. You had an area where you worked on your company. You eventually had a son, a boy named Matt, who grew up, and there was an incident when he was quite young that you almost lost him.
I was on a business telephone, and he wanted to go visit his father, who was out on the combine. And I said, just a minute, typical. I became too involved in my business call, and he was tired of waiting, so he went out to find his father by himself. And at that time, they were harvesting hay right in the field behind our house.
And how old was he?
He was about 5 or 6.
Okay.
So he's walking as a very little kid through the fields, and I was so afraid one of the big combines would not see him and run right over him.
And you eventually bought a horse.
I did, Smokey.
That you named Smokey, and eventually your son learned to ride, and you would often ride together and that type of thing. I want to talk about the pets you had on the farm. You had Smokey, and then you got another very unusual pet named Polly.
Polly the pig. When I bought her, she was 11 pounds. I didn't know pigs continued to grow until they were dispatched. So most pigs are slaughtered between 6 months and 9 months. Polly was a pet, and she continued to grow. She was 4.5 years old when she weighed 620 pounds.
Polly and Smokey became great friends. Tell me about that friendship.
It was more Polly was a friend with Smokey. She bonded with Smokey. Smokey could care less, but everywhere Smokey went grazing in the fields, she would be right beside him.
You went to a function in the winter, and you were coming back late at night, and it was a terrible, terrible snowstorm. Tell me about that.
Coming back, you're right, it was a terrible snowstorm. And when we pulled into our garage, I decided I better check on Smokey. When I was approaching, I saw a black blob out in the field. Well, it turned out to be Smokey, and he was lying down. I went to him and tried to get him up. There was no way I could get him up. He was definitely alive, and I ran into Mike. He then called up two of our workers, and they ended up coming out also. And we eventually, through a blizzard and being out there close to an hour in blizzard conditions, we finally got Smokey to stand up and brought him into the barn, gave him some gruel, some hot meal.
If a horse is down and you can't get it up,
He would have definitely died.
so how did he do after that?
He was fine, absolutely fine. It was a couple of years later when he got into bad hay, and that ended up being his demise.
And Polly didn't deal with that very well.
No, and I didn't realize that. She had bonded so much with Smokey that when Smokey died, she walked away. Now, how can you lose a 620-pound pig? But we did. We couldn't find her, and we did find her later on that day, brought her back to the ranch, and again, the next day she left. I think in retrospect, she was looking for Smokey.
And did she ever come back?
Each time we would find her and bring her back.
It must be hard to bring home a 600-pound pig.
Yes.
Okay. You also established what you called the Little Ranch, I believe. Is that what you
Yes.
called it? And it was in an area, it was a place the three of you could get away, and sort of like going to a little mini resort, and you could do all kinds of things with your son and your husband. Tell me a little bit about that.
That was wonderful. It was 150 acres right on the Snake River, and it was down in a canyon, and for once I could be a farm wife. Out at the ranch, I was not a farm wife. I had my own business to handle. I was not out at the ranch doing anything but photographing. So at the little farm, I actually helped with my husband clearing trees, weeds, brush, sticks, having bonfires.
Tell me about the facility that you stayed in.
We had a little tiny trailer. It was a tent trailer the first year. Then we moved up a little bit higher, and then the second year we finally had a septic system put in. But until then, we just had an outhouse.
Now, eventually, the family decided to sell the farm. You still continued to go out to your little ranch, though, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
We still owned that.
There was flooding, wasn't there?
The day before, we had a ground blizzard. I didn't even know what a ground blizzard was. In the Northeast, there's no such thing because we have trees, and they stop anything like a ground blizzard. But at a ground blizzard, you don't even need it to be snowing. The wind is so strong, it blows that very, very light snow of the Rocky Mountains and pushes it right across the ground.
In the East, is it similar to what they call a whiteout?
It was definitely a whiteout, but it wasn't from snow falling, but
Yeah,
from snow
blowing.
blowing.
Okay.
And then the following few days, from all the snow, and when it began to melt, the Oakley Dam was compromised, and they thought it was going to break and flood the Oakley, the town. So all the farmers in the area volunteered their time and their workmen, and they built a drain for the overflow to go. When I came home from Twin Falls that one evening after all that rain, I hit a spot on our road that was now, water was flowing over it, and it was quite deep. Though it was nighttime, I didn't know how deep it was. I could see the white caps on the river. So I drove into it, and the water started knocking my car to the side, and then the water started coming into my car.
Oh my.
I finally made it to the other side, but how stupid I was. Here I had my son, a toddler, in his car seat in the back.
Your son has grown up, and he went into the Coast Guard.
Yes.
And now you have two lovely,
boy and girl.
a boy and a girl, for grandchildren. So you're a grandma now. You and Mike kind of went your separate ways, and you ultimately divorced. And then comes the more current part of your life. Are you putting together a life that's going to make another good book?
Not in the future. I think I'm going to write, my last book will be about climbing Mount Kilimanjaro, hitchhiking through Africa from Nairobi down to South Africa and
Have you
back.
started it?
No.
How do you get started?
I love to write, and I just write.
In retirement, or even before that, you had very close girlfriends in high school that you always stayed in contact. And I think one of them might have been one you got together with more regularly, and you were single. And she had a brother that had been in high school where you were in high school. He was a couple years older, but she suggested you call him. He was feeling kind of down in the dumps one day, and you called, and then you talked, and then eventually you got together.
We did. We got together at a class reunion because he was in my older sister's class, and I happened to be back in Pennsylvania visiting her when we went back to Darien, and I reconnected with him. He is the brother of my best friend from Darien High School.
There are so many new unique stories about class reunions, especially when you get older like all of us are. You got together, you were looking for a home to retire to, and you found this lovely home that is just chock full of all these wonderful things you've brought back from all over the world. You married Larry Chapman. This is the home that you live in. It's in Tellico Village, of course, and on the water. He loves to play golf and he loves boating, so he's in the right place. And you didn't begin writing, do I have this correctly, until you came to Tellico Village?
I was golfing with Ginny Courtwright, and she said to me when I was telling one of my airline stories, she said, "Oh my gosh, you should write a book." I've always heard that. Well, right after that, the library put on a memoir writing class, and I went to it, and that was the start of Behind the Smile.
Behind the Smile. I don't know if I have a favorite. I loved Darien Waters because it's like almost like all of us have a childhood like that, just on a different street. Larry has grown children, and you do too, so you're a blended family. Are the children close by, or do they just special occasions you get to see them?
With my son being in the Coast Guard, he's now in Portsmouth, Virginia. They come down to visit every few months.
And Larry's children?
And one lives in Boston and Nantucket, and the other one is a professional caddy for the Women's League.
You have been a 20-year member of the Outdoor Writers Association of America. You've been a member of the International Federation of Fly Fishers, 9-year member of the Nature Conservancy of Idaho, and in 1993, the Exporter of the Year for the state of Idaho. Now, is that, as exporter, in some way connected to your company?
Yes.
Okay, your company, which was the
Angler's Calendar and Catalog Company.
Tell me a little bit about your business.
I started photographing for Sierra Designs in Berkeley, California. They're a backpacking company. They're still in existence. I did that for 1 year, and then I decided I had so many fishing photographs that I started, and there was at that time no fishing calendar on the market. So I started the Angler's Calendar Company, and then if I'm going to be mailing out something about my calendars, I might as well add a few more things, and that started the Catalog Company. It eventually grew where I was talking yearly to 1,600 stores worldwide, and then we did a mailer for the catalog to 200,000 individuals.
It adds to all the awards that I've seen since I've had a tour of your house. As a writer that has written 7 books, do you have any advice for some of the people here in the village? I understand there is a group that gets together and shares things they've written. What's important for them to know?
I would say the most important thing is to write something about what you already know, what you're familiar with. And then go from there, have some, not just friends, but maybe a professional or two to help with editing. It's very hard to get into the big name companies. You might have to self-publish initially. We have a group, Authors Guild of Tennessee. There are 2 in the village that belong to that group. We have about 40 members. But you have to have a published book to be accepted, and it has to be professionally edited.
Will you ever then write fiction?
I have led such an interesting life. There's no point in my writing about something that's fiction. I can write just about any aspect of my growing up to what's happening today.
Do you take extensive notes on all along, or is this all in your head?
I do have notes, but they're not extensive. A lot is in my head, and then I go back and go both on the internet, and I do have an encyclopedia that some people don't even know about today, encyclopedias. But I do look things up, and I get photographs from the encyclopedia, and that helps me with my writing.
The computer has made that much easier, I think, for writers than going back to World Book Encyclopedia, which we all had, most of us had in our homes.
Yes, my mother was a salesperson for World Book Encyclopedia.
Okay. I want to thank you so much for sharing your life with us. I still can't get over all the things you've done, and I've enjoyed every one of these books. I think my favorite is still Behind the Smile, because you have so many exciting things happened. I look forward to running into you again, and maybe not for a show, but sitting down and telling me the last adventure you had.
Thanks, Joan. And we'll see each other when we play golf.
And one more thing, where can we find your books?
You can get them at Preferred Pharmacy right here in the village, or at American Commissary in Lenore City.
Thank you for viewing The Ladies of Tellico Village, and we'll see y'all next time.